be doing something completely different on Brandon's World today because for the first time in what feels like forever, we are not talking sports. I'm going to be doing an experiment today because, folks, since fall 2023, now this is my fourth season watching, so yes, I am a newly acquainted person to this universe, but I am going to be talking about Survivor 48 because there are a lot of opinions on this season. Obviously, after great gameplay wise of Survivor 45 and very compelling characters, you had this season where everybody left with an idol in their pocket in season 46. You had very strategic gameplay driving decision makers in Survivor 47. And now, here in Survivor 48, this season to me was more about emotion. So I'm going to be honest with you here. I am going to be going based off the fact that you have already watched Survivor, that you're a fan of the show, that you're listening to this recap, and that you are not a first time, I guess, sort of fan of Survivor or that you've never heard of the show. That's where I'm sort of going here, and I'm going to keep it real. I am recording this portion of the show on Sunday, May 18th, before the finale. I'm going to record all my thoughts on everything before the finale, and then you guys are going to see an edit, oh, like they used to do back in the pre-New Era days where Jeff Probst would say, I'll see you in Los Angeles. That's why you're gonna see me with two different shirts on, probably, and you're gonna see potentially, me looking different because this is gonna be recorded over the course of 2 days. But I'm just gonna give you, and I don't know how long this could be. This could be 10 minutes, this could be 20 minutes, it could be 30 minutes. I'm gonna give you my thoughts. I don't know if we're gonna go necessarily episode by episode. I thought I would just sort of give you the highlights. I do have an article that will be up a little bit later today by the time this video goes live and this audio podcast. I'll put it in the description below on Voltage Live and my complete recap, which is where I sort of give a complete season recap, sort of episode by episode of what happens this season on Survivor. But this season, in my opinion, really set the tone from episode one with the relationship between Joe and Eva when they get back from the first challenge, which is their original tribe Wagi, which along with those two consisted of Bianca, Shaheen, Thomas, and Star. They dominate the first challenge, which then obviously would send Kevin from Vua and Kyle, who we know now is obviously a main character of this season, from Siva to go do the other challenge to see who gets their camp supplies. I do like the fact that it's more of a journey now, and that Evan and Kyle, they had to follow a rope to a machete. Then they had to get down the pot. Then they had to use the water to fill the pot into a bucket. It's different than Sweat versus Savvy. I do like the fact that it's two individual people competing against each other, and we see Kyle's good nature in this show very early on in episode one when he ends up breaking the pot, if you remember, and then he helps Kevin fill the water and helps Kevin get his supplies for the Vua tribe, which is really the only good thing Vua did before the tribe swap in episode 4. But again, we see the relationship between Eva and Joe very early on when Eva pulls Joe aside. He tells her, she tells him, excuse me, about her autism. And, Joe basically swears to protect her. He said he would put his game on the line. He basically said he would lose the game to save Eva in that very powerful confessional. And it sort of sets the tone, in my opinion, for the rest of the season. And then we go to the first immunity challenge, which is pretty much, status quo for Vua the first 3 episodes, where Vua loses. They have to go to tribal council. And at this point, we start seeing Say who is one of the main characters of this season in the pre-merge era. She's always causing chaos. This is where her rivalry really starts off with Mary. Her friendship in the beginning with Cedric seems like they want to work together, as Say is the one that finds an idol in episode one, but we know that it's based off those animal symbols. And Cedric basically decodes the code, which is listen, uh, for Say, and gives her the idol. Um, and we also see in this first episode, before we get to Tribal, Kyle first bonding with Camilla over their similar backgrounds. And so we go to Tribal, and obviously the decision is between Stephanie, who eventually gets voted out, and Say. Mary is one of the only people on the tribe that votes for Say, because Stephanie plays her shot in the dark. She does not vote. It is obviously unsuccessful. Stephanie goes home. Or if you think about how crazy this would have been, right? If Stephanie plays her shot in the dark and she is safe, how that completely changes the game potentially, because Say would have been the one going home. Then episode two, we know Vua obviously loses again. Kevin, though, basically, ends his game by trying to do this strategy to where he wants to eliminate Say. He's boasting it all over the beach. Um, he wants her to feel comfortable by not playing that idol. And so Cedric, though, tells Say about Kevin's plan. Cedric likes Say. He wants her to work together. Um, and then Justin basically is the one that said, "Hey, Kevin is so crazy. Let's vote him out." The other aspect of episode two was our first journey here, where three people had to get on a boat. It was Mitch. This is where we learn a lot about Mitch's stutter early on in the game, and Mitch was killing it in the pre-merge era for Siva. He ends up winning a block a vote. Thomas from Wagi ends up winning a steal a vote, and Mary on Voa ends up losing her vote, which really in the end again does not really matter that much, as the vote goes 3-1. Say again gets voted by Kevin, but Cedric, Say, and Justin do vote for Kevin, and Kevin is the second person eliminated after Say does play her idol on herself, which again, that vote for Say by Kevin does not count. Episode 3 was really all about the Vua tribe once again losing in the blindfold challenge, where Cedric is calling for Vua, Shaheen is calling for Wagi, Camilla is calling for Siva. Siva ended up being second. Wagi was first. They won the big hammock supplies there. And because Logie won, they got to choose three people, one from each tribe, to go on a journey. And they chose Bianca, Justin, Camilla, and it was here at this journey. Justin did not have a vote, which paid pivotal, obviously. Bianca did not have a vote, which pays pivotal later on. And Camilla has an extra vote. And this was the one where they rolled dice. They had to roll 7 dice. Skulls are bad. The flames are good. They had to get 4 flames to get the extra vote. And if you got 4 skulls, you lost your vote. And so we know what happens at the crazy tribal council. Obviously, you have Cedric, you have Say, you have Justin, who want to try to eliminate Mary. Mary fights back. She plays her shot in the dark, and it hits. So no votes cast against her. And so, because of Justin not having a vote, Mary playing her shot in the dark, and this tribe then being down only 2 votes, which was Cedric and Say. So they both voted Mary. So since Mary played her shot in the dark, she is safe. They had to do a revote, and Mary could not be voted for. So you could vote for Justin, you could vote for Say, and you could vote for Cedric. Well, Justin cannot vote. Obviously, Cedric is not voting for himself, so he has to vote between Say and Justin. Obviously, Say is not voting for herself, so she had to vote between Cedric and Justin. Cedric actually chooses Say, but Say chooses Justin. So now we're tied 1-1. And there's another revote where at this point Jeff has to tell everybody at Tribal Council that Justin does not have a vote. So it is down between Say and Justin as to who can go home. Cedric again votes for Say. Say again votes for Justin. So now we're at deadlock. And at this point, because Say has a vote, or because Say is a vote on the table, I should say, and because Mary and Justin, Mary plays her shot in the dark, Justin loses vote because they cannot vote. Cedric is the one who has to decide who goes home, and says saving his number one Justin, he chooses Say, which again causes a ripple effect on the beach potentially because following Tribal, that craziness, we get the tribe swap, which brought everything into dismay. But the funny thing is the Vula tribe actually got Camilla, Kyle, Joe, and Shaheen. Think about those big four. This is where David comes over to Wagi and where Eva and David form that relationship. Um, and really sets the tone for the big majority alliance in the season. So at Tribal though, Vua does have to go to Tribal, and Thomas is also on that Vua tribe with Joe, Shaheen. So the California Boys Alliance they formed in episode one is there, along with Kyle and Camilla. And this is where Kyle and Camilla essentially make their first move because Kyle, who acquired an idol earlier on in the game, thanks to Camilla's help, that's where they really formed their bond in episode one. He plays the idol for himself, and he also plays the extra vote that Camilla received for going on that journey. So the vote goes 3-2. Um, Essentially, you have um, Kyle and Thomas, but because Kyle played an idol, the vote for Kyle does not count. Could you imagine if Kyle did not have an idol and Kyle is already gone? But Thomas is eliminated with the block of vote advantage in his pocket. Episode 5 was the hold on was the Bianca vote, and that was where she loses her vote because of the advantage. She decides to stir some things up on the Siva beach. Ultimately, she tells Cedric about the fact that she does not have a vote, and Cedric ends up making the decision to just get Bianca out because of trust. This is also the episode where Eva has her complete meltdown on the beach during the table puzzle challenge. She tells everybody about her autism, and her and Joe and their relationship is now completely out in the open. And this is where this season completely changes because now Eva and Joe are seen as a power couple, essentially, if you will. Star ends up giving Eva her idol after Eva solves the puzzle with the word silent for Star. And Star, I think, feels bad for Eva because she has autism, so she gives Eva the idol. And now we get to the merge, which is where Eva, Joe, Shaheen, Kyle, David, these five individuals become this big, strong player alliance. And they really just essentially take over the game. Um, and their first target is Charity. She goes down, and then which basically destroys Mitch's game. I mean, Mitch and Charity had a very good relationship on the island, but once we get to the merge, you see people like Charity gone. You see people like Mitch really struggle. You see Chrissy gone immediately. Um, and right before we get there, we have sort of the David Joe battling it out in the record with the bucket challenge. And David ends up winning the reward, and the second tribal to send Cedric to the jury will say who was on the first team is the last person eliminated before the jury, which is always the worst spot in the game. Um, but now that Say is gone, now that Cedric is the first person on the jury, Once they get Chrissy out, this is where this alliance between David, Joe, Eva, Kyle, and Shaquem start to break down a little bit because David did not want Chrissy to go home yet. He wanted Camilla to go home because David figured out that Kyle and Camilla were working together. Joe and Eva did not want to break up the Kyle relationship yet because Kyle was really pushing for Camilla to stay because obviously Kyle has been in the middle now all season long with this secret alliance he's at with Camilla that David at this point was the only one to figure out. And so Eva and Joe, essentially, and Shaheen, if you will, have a better read that Kyle is more trustworthy than David. So once Chrissy goes, that's where they make their move to take out David. It was the first real blindside, if you will, of the merge era where David is eliminated. And so now that David was gone, and you were down to Eva, Joe, Shaheen, Kyle, Camilla, Mitch, Star, and Mary. It was essentially four versus four, and Camilla, for like the next 3 or 4 episodes, is trying to push to Kyle to flip on Joe. That, hey, let's get Joe eliminated. Yet, this is where in the season it does get a little bit boring the next couple of episodes because essentially it is status quo elimination. Star is gone. Followed by that, Mary is gone. And there's a lot of talk from the likes of Mitch, Camilla, Mary that, you know, let's make a move. We can't beat Joe in final. We can't beat Eva in final. Eva and Joe are running this game the way Chrissy said early on. But this alliance is just a damn stranglehold on this game, and they're just picking people apart until we get to episode 12, which is where Out Reward, which Shaheen wins reward. It's his first challenge win of the entire season on his own. He takes Joe and he also takes Kyle. And back at camp, Camilla, Mitch are pissed off at Shaheen because he fed Joe. And Joe at this point had won 4 or 5 immunity challenges. He ends up winning the immunity challenge later on. And it was Out Reward where they get their letters from home and they're very emotional. And we see this very emotional scene where Joe is telling his sister Joanne, who had unfortunately passed away from domestic violence, that he is out there, that he's going to win this game for her. And we get a real emotional moment from Joe. We also get a real emotional moment from Shaheen where he reads his letter from his mom. It says that Survivor is the reason why him and his mom got back together. And Kyle reading a letter from his dad, where his dad basically said that he loves him for one of the first times in his whole life. It was a very emotional scene. And when Joe goes off, Kyle and Shaheen are basically making a play against Joe or Eva. Shaheen, in my opinion, smartly says, let's take out Eva because, you know, Eva's just going to vote for Joe, and Eva does not really have a shot to win this game at this point. She's just sort of hanging around, and Joe is the brain of the operation. Kyle takes this as an opportunity to take out Shaheen first to blindside Joe because he feels like Joe, the panic and the fact that he is too over reliant on his alliance is going to be his downfall. And Kyle and Camilla smartly and they pull it off and they convince Joe and Eva that Shaheen as an idol and that he's planning to use it and flip on Joe because Shaheen believes he cannot sit with Joe at the end and win this game. Shaheen is eliminated and we are now down to the final five. And Shaheen was a great player. I really liked him. Had a lot of great thoughts. Pre-game, my top 4 picks to win this game were Eva, Joe, Shaheen, and Kyle after episode 1. I picked Eva number 1. I thought Joe was number 2. And I thought Kyle was number 3 in that order. I thought Joe would be taken out once they get to the merge because he would be seen as such a threat. And then Eva would be on her own and be able to overcome That obviously did not happen. The one thing Eva can say, though, I will say, is that she has never had her name written down on parchment. That would be her one pitch to the jury. Kyle has the strategic game side where he might have made a game winning move there by convincing Joe to flip on Shaheen. Camilla is seen more as like just Joe's, or excuse me, Kyle's sidekick. So I don't see Camilla winning this game. As I said before, Mitch was very dominant in challenge pre-merge. He was one of the central figures. Obviously, his stuttering was actually a big part of his story. Star even said on her way out that respect to Mitch, he didn't stutter. Um, but this is really a two-horse race. If you look at it right now between Joe and Kyle as to who wins Survivor 48, I think that edit in episode 12 with the Shaheen vote where you're getting inside Joe's head, then you get the moment of Joe telling her sister goodbye. I don't think we get that if Joe does not win Survivor 48. So as I sit here today, the Sunday before the Survivor season 48 season finale, I am predicting that Joe will win Survivor 48. We will see if that comes to fruition. And so, with that, let's see what happens as we go to the season finale. But it did hit me that in episode 12, that while the gameplay sucked, and before the Shaheen vote, the Mary vote was obvious, and the Star vote was obvious, and we were all screaming at Mitch and Camilla and everybody to make a move, and nobody made a move. And it felt like they were handing this game on a platter to Joe or Eva. That there is a reason why these people were picked on Survivor 48 because these are some of the most emotional stories, at least in my 4 seasons of watching Survivor. And I've talked to people. My brother's a huge fan. He's been watching since season one. My cousin's been watching on and off for 2 decades. This is one of the most emotional and compelling and one of the great people cast of Survivor. I think, especially in the new era, the gameplay may have not been great, and it may have been more about alliances and wanting to be the strong guys and battling it out and not turning on each other and not playing Survivor essentially all the way to the fullest. But I think it's going to make for a incredible season finale. I think there's going to be twists. I think there's going to be turns. Camilla and Kyle are going to want to turn on each other. Um, we'll see where Mitch lies. My prediction is that Kyle and Eva will side with Kyle for one more vote, that Mitch is gone at 5. We will go to the final four, where I think it would be incredible theater, to be honest with you, if Joe or Eva compete in fire. Eva has an idol that she will play, obviously. And then if Joe wins, or excuse me, then if she wins immunity, she will give it to Joe to play. So either way, Eva is in the final four. I think the only way that Joe is not in the final four is if, you know, Camilla, Kyle, or Mitch somehow win immunity and those three band together to take out Joe. It would be, all three of them doing it, which would be the only way it would happen. But what I see is Kyle and Camilla taking each other on at fire. I think Joe will win the final four immunity. Joe will take Eva with him to the end. Kyle will defeat Camilla in fire. And then we get Eva, Joe, Kyle, final three. I think it will come down to Joe and Kyle. And I just think there's too much respect on that jury for Joe, his story, his central figure, being the dad of the group. I think Joe may win this thing by like a 6-2 vote. Uh, and I think that Joe will win Survivor 48, but we'll see what happens at the season finale on Wednesday. Let's now go to my thoughts on the season finale, episode 13 of Survivor 40, and it is Thursday morning, ladies and gentlemen. Survivor 48 has just concluded. If I do look a little bit sleepy, it's because I did not finish Survivor 48 till 12:15 a.m. Eastern Time last night because I was going back and forth between Survivor 48 and the Pacers next game, the wild overtime game. I had to watch the rest of it, so I sort of put Survivor on pause at the Fire 4 Final Four fire making and you watch the last half hour. So I am a little bit sleepy. But let's get into it. As I mentioned before, Eva, Joe, Kyle, Camilla, Mitch. That is our final five. Let's get right into the final five immunity challenge. Before we do that, the five players see instead of tree mail, they see a potential advantage for the final five immunity challenge, which I have not seen. Again, I've only been watching Survivor since Survivor 45. So I thought that that was a unique twist. They went back to the animal symbols that we saw earlier with the hidden beware advantages slash hidden immunity idols during the tribe stage of the game. And Eva ends up figuring out that the word is secure, not rescue the way that Kyle thought it was. It was down to those two. Eva secures a advantage in the final five immunity challenge, which is where instead of throwing this ball into a net to get your number, she can place the ball into the net, saving her a significant amount of time, as we see later on in the challenge, where participants had to go through a muddy rope, then they had to throw this ball into a huge basket, get it out of this netting, then throw this ball into another basket, which where Eva got her advantage. It would reveal three numbers, and the three numbers in some particular order would unlock a combo lock that would allow you to get a key out to climb up a huge wall to finish a survivor puzzle. It involved mud, it involved a puzzle, two things we all love on Survivor. Joe and Mitch actually get out to an early lead. Kyle in third, Eva in fourth. Camilla is significantly behind the rear view, but we know how good Camilla is at puzzles. She ends up making up a lot of time. She gets back into it with the puzzle because everybody else is slow on the puzzle, which I was surprised at Joe, who literally did not know how to do a puzzle, considering the fact he has three kids, and Mitch, who was very good with puzzles in the early on tribal stage of the game, could not figure out the puzzle either. Eva did a pretty good job with it, just not as fast as Camilla. Camilla makes up all that time. She ends up winning Final Five immunity, and an absolute shock to everybody. She ends up winning reward, which is a pasta reward at the sanctuary. And I thought she was going to take Mitch. She does not. She takes Eva. And officially, Eva basically was on every single reward pretty much the whole season, besides the last one with Joe, Shaheen, and Kyle. Um, and so nothing really does happen at reward. You know, they talk about the fact that Eva's playing her idol, obviously, so she's in Final Four. Camilla talks about how she has the immunity necklace. Obviously, back at the beach, Mitch is pitching Kyle on him, Kyle, Camilla, banding together three against two to take out Joe. That they do now have the numbers. And the crazy thing is, Mitch, or excuse me, Camilla and Kyle actually think that Mitch is a bigger threat to the game than Joe, which gameplay wise, we as the viewer obviously see that's not true. Joe has four immunity challenge wins, Mitch has none. But they think that, you know, the jury with David and Chrissy, and Mary and Cedric and Shaheen, you know, and Star, that all these people love Mitch, not only because of his stutter, because of his personality, because he's been so, um, you know, just a great guy on the beach, that if they take Mitch to Final Three with either Kyle or Camilla, because they realize both of them cannot sit at Final Three, that essentially the SIVA votes are going to be split and that the Wagi member is probably going to win Survivor 48. So they make the decision to vote out Mitch. And these players have such respect for Mitch that Joe, Eva, Kyle, and Camilla, they all come up to Mitch beforehand and were like, Mitch, we're going to be honest with you. If you're at Final Three, you're such a great guy that you win Survivor 48, so we're going to vote you out. And there was no drama to it whatsoever. I don't understand why Mitch did not play his shot in the dark, to be honest with you. Now, again, I don't know the rules. Maybe there isn't a shot at the dark at Final Five because it's always a 1 in 6 shot, though I doubt that's the case. To me, Mitch should have caused some chaos and tried to save his own game. It's almost like he accepted his own fate. But then we get to the Final Four challenge, which is the Survivor Classic, where you're putting pool balls on a rack and they're alternating which side of the rack they come out left, right, left, right. You're adding in more balls. And if your ball drops, if you don't catch it on the way down, you lose. And it comes down to Kyle and Joe. Kyle actually ends up winning immunity. And before we even got to the challenge, we saw Eva and Joe talk about if either of them win immunity, that they are taking each other, obviously. We see that Camilla basically tells Kyle, as I said, Kyle telling Camilla as well, they can't sit next to each other at Final Three. Camilla decides she would rather have Joe go into fire to defeat Kyle, so she would take Eva. Where Kyle, being loyal to Joe more than Eva, even though he really likes Eva, this old game, promises Joe if he wins immunity, he is going to take Joe with him and send Eva and Camilla into fire. And that is what happens. Kyle decides to take Joe, but then we see Camilla practicing, and she's doing a little bit with the spark and the fire and the flame out there in the woods. But we see Eva practicing, and she is struggling. And she has another meltdown the same way she did in episode 4. And we see Kyle and Joe sitting at camp, and you hear Eva screaming. I thought it was a great job by the edit team there. And Joe basically says he goes to check on her. And at this point, we see a confession from Kyle, and this is where it really hit me about this season. And again, maybe it's because of my disability, and I don't talk about this a lot. Those of you that are listening to this for the first time, maybe you aren't a sports fan. Maybe you don't know that I have cerebral palsy. I have a physical disability. So maybe that's where Mitch and Eva and this season hits me on a different level. But Kyle is basically like, I would risk my game. Now, again, Joe in episode 1 said he would risk his game for Eva. Kyle, here in the final episode of the season, episode 13, says that he would risk his spot in the final three for Eva because he does not want to put her through pain. And it just shows to me what a great guy Kyle is. It goes all the way back to helping Kevin win the supplies for the Vua camp in episode 1. Just an incredible, powerful moment where we see Joe consoling Eva. He tells Eva, let me do this. Go to the final three. You can win. And Eva basically says, Joe, no. You can help me. You can show me what to do, which Joe does a really good job at teaching her and going slow and showing her how to make fire. But Eva says, I have to do this. So we get to the fire making challenge, and there are different supplies there than the ones that are provided at camp. So Eva gets a little bit rattled because of that. And she starts flipping out again. And Joe and Kyle now are both trying to calm her down. So we get to the fire making challenge, and Eva does a really good job getting a flame started quickly, nurturing that flame, but the wind ends up dying it down and she got very close to ending the challenge very quickly. But as I mentioned, the flame dies down, the wind was pushing it away from the fire. Eva gets upset again. She almost goes into another meltdown. Again, Joe and Kyle are calming her down. And by the way, so is Camilla, who is basically saying, Girl, I don't know how to make fire. I can't get a flame. I'm out. Here's what you need to do. And Camilla, without helping her, essentially helps Eva win the fire making challenge. And since what I wanted all along, to me, the right final three, Eva, Joe, Kyle. And Camilla was so gracious about it and, basically accepted her fate, talked about the fact how she played a great game. And then right before the final tribal council, Kyle reveals to Joe and Eva about him being a lawyer. Obviously, we heard that he was a teacher for a couple years. Then he went to law school, went to the University of Michigan, became a lawyer. We heard from Eva that she actually, along with being a hockey ref, did graduate from from college after 3 years with her bachelor's degree, and now she's working on her PhD. She works with the Science Center. She works in the political realm as well. And Joe's like, man, I'm just a damn fire captain. And you can see the edit and the eyes from Joe of like, oh crap, these guys have a great story at Final Tribal Council. So we get to the Final Tribal Council, and I thought the jury was very respectful. You know, early on, Kyle did not really talk about his gameplay a lot. Somebody asked him, and again, this is early morning, and I'm sorry I cannot recall who at this time. I just woke up this morning doing this recording before work to get this out. But they were all asked about, what things did you hide in your gameplay that you want to talk about now? And Eva talks about, her safety without power advantage. Joe talks about wearing his emotions on his sleeve, and Kyle basically says, "Yeah, I was in prison, so nothing to do with gameplay wise." Um, I thought this final tribal console really flipped when they talk about the Shaheen vote, and Eva basically plays it off as that was her strategy to eliminate Shaheen, that they wanted her and Joe wanted to take a shot at Shaheen, and Camilla pretty much interrupts and says, "No, no, I want to hear Kyle's side of the story." And we see Camilla mouth to Kyle, "I got you." And this is where the nuclear bomb is, where Kyle describes the exact plan he came up with, what happened, completely true at the reward with Shaheen, where Shaheen did bring up Joe or Eva's name. Shaheen pushes back that, he said, Joe and Eva want to sit with Shaheen with the final three, but Shaheen said, I want to sit with Joe and Eva because I thought I could have beat you guys. I thought that that was a real knock in their gameplay, and I thought the way Io explained it perfectly was how he came up with a plan. He told Joe the truth. The lie was that Shaheen told Camilla that he had an idol, and we know now through confessionals and all that that Shaheen did know about Io and Camilla's secret relationship, and we see at Final Tribal Console, Joe and Eva had no idea about Kyle's secret relationship with Camilla, and that secret relationship proved out to be the reason why Kyle, with a 5-2-1 vote, Cedric voting for Joe because of Joe's relationship with his kids and wanting to do it for his kids, Star and Mary voting for Eva because they said that Eva, and she explained this in her final answer, her final trouble console, that we've seen warriors play the middle like Io and win Survivor. We've seen strong guys like Joe be likable, win four immunity challenges, and win Survivor. We've never seen someone like Eva who played complete black and white. Her alliance, unlike Io's, was completely out in the open. She shared every advantage. She found herself with strong, loyal people in the game that kept her to the end. And that's why those two voted for Eva. And in the end, everybody voted for Kyle because he played the best game of Survivor. And Kyle absolutely deserved the $1 million. I thought it was a very fun, entertaining, very emotional season finale of Survivor. Again, out of 45, 46, 47, 48. Maybe it's recency bias, but out of the four Survivor seasons I've watched, I think 48, 46, 47, and then 45 would be my rankings of the season finale, only because 46 had the drama of the Charlie Kinsey vote, and we know Maria obviously flipped on Charlie, being a bitter villain, if you will. But I'm sorry, there's a lot of hate out there towards Joe and Eva, and again, maybe it's because it's my disability. And I get it from a survivor standpoint. This alliance made some of the votes, like Star, Mary, status quo this season. It was somewhat boring. It was one of the most boring, um, I guess, post-merge episodes in a while from what I've heard and again from what I've watched. But these last two episodes now, with the Shaheen vote, and with this season finale, a very emotional season finale, if you ask me. Again, maybe it's because of my background, but every time I see Joe and Eva and I see Eva getting emotional, I get emotional right away. And I do think in any other season, like season 47, Andy, Sam, Rachel, even Teeny at some points, there was very cutthroat gameplay in that season. I don't know if Mitch and Eva in some seasons even last to the merge. I think they got into this season with the right combo of people. Obviously, Joe and Eva. For Kyle, it's Camilla. I don't know if Kyle can play the line, and maybe if Kyle ends up on a different tribe or Eva ends up on a different tribe away from Joe, this season ends differently. This season was played with emotion. It was a different Survivor season, I think, than what we're used to, where there was a lot of idols and backstabbing and plotting, and it wasn't. Towards the end, it got about the $1 million, and that's where you saw the backstabbing when push came to shove. And as um, Jeff said, at some point someone's gonna have to turn on you. But really, even in the final four, like Joe and Eva do not turn on each other. They flat out said they're going to debate each other, and whoever did a better job articulating their story at Final Tribal, they thought was going to win. And that ended up being Eva, obviously. Kyle, Camilla, even though they didn't want to sit at each other at Final Three, at Final Tribal Council, Camilla did not turn on Kyle the way that Maria turned on Charlie. She helped Kyle, in my opinion, win Final Tribal Council. She definitely advocated for him at Ponderosa. And that may be the reason why Kyle won, and why he got Shaheen, and why he got David, and why he got Chrissy. Um, and so I think when we look back on this season, it will be one of the most emotional seasons in Survivor history. The Vua episode 3 tribal will go down as one of the most historic tribals of all time. The Mary Say relationship we got pre-merge was great. And when they found out about Thomas's steal a vote and the way that Kyle and Camilla were acting in that episode 4 comes back now as a pivotal moment in this season. Obviously, Eva and Joe's relationship, Eva's couple meltdowns, you have Star being, essentially cast to the side, but being one of the crazy characters of the season with her positive attitude. You have David with his milk, which they give him at the after show, and his story and him, just wanting to win essentially, every challenge and being a strong guy. So this was a more personality based season than gameplay season. And maybe that's why it didn't hit as good as the last three, because 45, 46, 47 all had incredible gameplay. 48 did not have it as much, but boy, did it have an emotional conclusion. And we'll see what happens when Survivor 49 returns in the fall. With that, thank you so much for listening to my Survivor 48 recap. I am thinking of potentially starting maybe even another channel, maybe another series dedicated to Survivor. I'm going to go back and watch old seasons of Survivor over the summer. If you guys would like me to recap other old seasons of Survivor or even talk about my original thoughts on one of the earlier seasons I've watched, which again are only 45, 46, and 47, let me know either on audio or on video. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.